All right, Don, welcome to Mitiga Minute.
Hey, Ryan, thanks for having me.
I almost said Mitiga Mike, but this is Mitiga Minute. Where we're actually going to focus on actual product capabilities and features for specific topics. We're doing a series on SaaS, and today, for some reason, we're talking about Salesforce. Why is that?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Google, Alliance, Coca-Cola, they all were breached through their CRM. And besides that, we have 8 out of 10 companies got hit by a cloud security incident last year. Salesforce specifically holds everything an attacker wants, and most security teams have zero visibility into it. And I think it's time to change it.
You know, as a security practitioner, I've been doing this a while, so have you and our listeners. Salesforce isn't something that you usually default to thinking about a lot in this in your sort of your day-to-day. Why should security teams care about Salesforce specifically?
Well, it's a classic one. Back in the days, we only knew that Dave from sales is the only one who's using Salesforce and managing all that. But today, Salesforce isn't just a sales tool. It holds finance, HR, legal, operations. They all live in there. And with that in mind, you now know you have NDAs, you have PII, revenue data, and security case history, which is basically just a treasure chest with a welcome mat. Like, hey, that's it. That's your place to go. And with every integration, email, ERP, ticketing, and this is just another entry point for an attacker. And that's where your classic SIEM and EDRs, and they're just built for a different area. The SaaS application layer is a blind spot.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of our listeners are spending, you know, millions, tens of millions more on their security controls and their people and their processes, SIMs, EDR, IPS solutions, data protection, this, that. Are you saying those traditional tools really don't address this issue?
Well, the classic malware or lateral movement across the network isn't something that your Salesforce incident will see. And when we're talking about an attacker, it could just look like that Dave from sales that we talked about earlier. He would look the same in the same case. And this is not something EDRs or SIEM were built for. And that's exactly the point. That's why we're missing out on this.
You know, a buddy of mine, he's a CISO, and in his organization, he's got Salesforce, like almost everybody does. But he's got a capability or a feature rather turned on called Salesforce Event Monitoring. And he says he leverages that for some security controls. I think it's kind of an inch deep sort of thing, but does having that kind of solve this problem, or are there still some blind spots?
I think this is a classic one between all SaaS, and specifically for Salesforce Event Monitoring. Have you actually looked at those logs for once? Let me just share you a quick screen just to show you. This is a simple JSON. This could be in a CSV blob as well. But this is what you would look at when you're scrolling through logs in the Salesforce, and specifically event monitoring. And besides all of those nonsense event names and event types, just breaking down and start normalizing what's going on in here is a mess. And taking the time and effort to start breaking down what you're looking at and what your analyst is supposed to make a decision on is going to take quite some time and doesn't make a lot of sense. And when we're talking about it, this is something very critical because there are 2 aspects that a lot of people miss. The first one, Apex callout, lightning page view. For a SOC analyst, this means nothing. And at 2 a.m. when there's an incident and he's looking through the logs and trying to make sense of what's going on, this is pretty useless. And one thing that always gets me and other people is that there are lots of different event types, just like the lightning page view, that aren't documented at all in Salesforce. And this is undocumented event types in your production environment. So an analyst is just flying blind on something they can't even Google, not alone ChatGPT hallucinations trying to make sense of what is that event name. And this isn't unique to Salesforce. Logging across SaaS became an afterthought, not a security feature. So it's basically your seat, not an alert.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said it's not just Salesforce and it's not just cloud. You see this pretty much everywhere. And I have personal experience working with people where I know that the folks that are tasked with managing the logging capabilities of an application, nobody likes doing this job. it's not usually the most senior person. Not to see that it's bad, but it's just like it's a grind putting this together. And a lot of times you find out that even the vendors like, I don't know what that code means, right? I don't know what that is,
Yeah.
let alone some SOC analysts. So, all right, I get the problem. I think our listeners get it. What does it, actually look like then if you have good visibility into this? Give us some real world examples.
Well, that's a good one. And honestly, a lot of what we catch is the basic stuff that most teams are completely missing. And that's something we saw earlier with the Shiny Hunters and the SLSH group with classic phishing, classic vision, and that's it. They're on, they're in, they're starting to operate. And that's what's terrifying. And let me show you a quick sequence. I would love to introduce you, and you probably already saw this before, but this is the Mitiga platform. And right here in this panel, this is the threat page view. That's where we see the alerts. And this is where the cool parts comes in, because here we have the main parts that an analyst would want to know. The first one is what happened, and breaking down those cryptic events with a title of activity from Tor exit node, the event type itself, noting that this was a login, and not just assuming something happened inside your Salesforce. We know this is a login. We know there's a Tor exit node. We have AI insights on the right side of the screen. We know how it was flagged. We know what threat intelligence vendors. We know this isn't typical for the user itself. And we see the user. We see this is an admin. And now we know this is a high severity alert. So we have the full context. We know how to jump into it. And if we do want to see the raw log, we do have it. And from there, we can pivot. And so this is a classic login event that looked very normal at the first glance, but we know this is very high. And when we go into just a few minutes later, 3 minutes after, we see the same user with a high alert, with password complexity policy changed to no restriction. This is pretty much getting weird and odd within a minute. And when we go down and see the cycle of events and we see the complete flow, we see another one coming in just a second later. And as we see here, a second later, we have password policy changes to never expire. And this is classic persistence text in the threat textbook. This is exactly what our attackers are going in. And the attack chain is pretty easier. We know that there was Tor login, it was policy weakening, persistency established, and we know that right now the attacker itself is already in, and we know how to act. And one thing I would like to note here is that the user admin Selva in here has no abbreviation inside the logs. And if you would look at other event types and you go ahead and see the ID itself, you would have to correlate all that. So the platform, which is really cool for me, it just goes ahead, enriches everything, gives you the AI insights, give you exactly the metrics that you want to look at. You don't want to waste your time on low or medium events. You want to see the high ones. You want to see the full attack chain. And this is exactly what I love about it. And from here, you can just completely go ahead and start browsing and diving into the workbench and understand exactly what happened chain after chain. But I guess I'll leave it to next time and keep some of the cool stuff for later.
No, that's awesome. And the juxtaposition between what you just showed within the Mitiga platform and the JSON blob, it's night and day. But the key takeaway there was Selva's not even in there. You got to run some crazy differential equation to pull that out of the log and actually make sense of that. And if you've got dozens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of users, I mean, forget it. There's no way to do that in a, with some pivot tables or through a SIM or something like that. Well, Idan, this was awesome. Thanks again for being part of Mitiga Minute.
Thank you, Brian. Loved being here. Looking forward for the next one.
Absolutely.